Welcome to Film Room. Excited to be here with Coach D-Lab, Coach Cam. It's me, Justin Brantley. Man, I feel like Emoni has taken over the news cycle over the last couple of days. So excited to talk to some actual basketball guys about where he's at, within his early career. And I think that one of the things that I've talked with, I know I've had the conversation with you, Coach Cam, on several occasions, but there's too many guys that aren't basketball guys doing a lot of these evaluations and a lot of these conversations surrounding this kid. So excited to hear from you guys, excited to have this conversation. So thanks for joining.
Excited to be on. Let's get it on.
I appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to it, man. He's obviously a galvanizing talent. And like you said, they put way too much on these kids way too early, man. So I want to give let's talk about how unfair that is, and then let's talk about what kind of player he is at the same time.
No doubt, no doubt. So let's start there. I've seen it and we've seen it, whether you're looking at, the kid out of Hillcrest Prep a couple years back that, they anointed so early. And it's like the media, Kyrie Walker, yeah. And it's like the media sets these kids up and gives them a title at 7th, 8th grade, number one 7th grader in the country, number one 8th grader in the country. And then they spend the next 3-4 years trying to tear them apart and tear them down. And I think that, that's unfair, especially to a kid like Emoni, who he just turned 17 in January, the end of January, actually. So you're talking about most of the evaluation we've had on him has been when he's 16 years old from this last year or 15 the year before. But to put such high expectations on a 16, 17-year-old kid, and then, you pick apart his game because you've seen him so much more than players have ever been seen in the past. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
You want to go first, Coach Cam, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, he's a kid that's been in the spotlight since 13, and he's 101. There hasn't been another kid that's been in the spotlight for so long, and every time he laces him up, he has to live up to expectations. And like you said, that's unfair. It's unfair to him because he's just a kid. He's not a grown man. He doesn't get paid millions of dollars. He's a kid, and every time he laces him up, I don't care if it's at an AAU tournament, it could be 3-on-3. It's going to be a camera on him. It's going to be somebody on social media following him. And every time he laces him up, he has to, exceed expectations. It is a bit unfair. But, it's just the world that we're living in now. Everything is the microwave era. Everything is in front of you. Everybody got a camera. Everybody got something to say. So us having this platform here, putting some basketball minds together so we can actually talk about him and his progression, things that he has to work on, things that we've seen, we can actually have that conversation. It's because we're basketball people. We're involved. We're not just somebody watching highlight clips and not involved with the game. We are. So, but it is a bit unfair that, he's had high expectations 13. I mean, we've been watching him since the 7th grade.
Yep.
He's not even a senior in high school yet. So, allow this young man to mature, allow his game to grow a little bit. You got to be able to do that. And it's unfair that he hasn't had the opportunity to do so.
So everything that we have now with the social media era and the cameras and all the highlights and all the video guys, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse. Because like you said, there are so many eyeballs on you and the expectations are so high that it's not even realistic to live up to those expectations every single time you're at the court. And, as you're a young man, grown men who guys in the NBA, the best of the best have bad games. So a young man who's 16, 17, and what's crazy, we're even talking about this, but 13, 14, 15-year-olds, as they're learning to develop their games and trying to figure out what their niche is, what they do well, trying different things in different games, because that's how you actually get better, is by trying different things, making mistakes, learning from your downfalls, but growing from them and continuing to improve. These guys don't get that opportunity because when they make a mistake or when they play poorly, which is going to happen, especially when you're young.
Part of the game.
It's no way to avoid it. But when they play poorly, and they don't even have to play poorly, when they don't play up to the expectations or the pedestal that the media guys have put them on, they tear them down and talk about it in such a derogatory way. And I hate it for those kids, their parents, everyone in their circle, because it's difficult not to comment, come to defense, be on the defensive, attack back because you're not even prepared for that. You're not media savvy enough to know that you have to leave the haters alone. Just stick to the grind, put your head down, keep working, keep getting better, and use every time that you come out and don't play well as a learning lesson, as a chance to get better and improve. And you don't know that at a young age, and your family doesn't know how to navigate that. So it's just it's a very difficult situation to be in. When we came up, if you played bad, the only people that knew were the people in the gym. Unfortunately, now thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, know when Emoni doesn't play well. So hate it for him, but also at the same time, it's a blessing because so many people get to see him when he does play well. It gets magnified and glorified, and that's why we all know his name. Where back in the day, there could have been a kid who was as talented, or let's not say a really good player, and nobody would have known except the people in his area. Nobody outside of 100 miles would have any idea who he was.
Yep, and you touched on a couple key things that I want to talk about. First and foremost, you brought up social media, and I think if you take the analyst out of it, let's just talk about being a kid in general and being on social media. And I'm one of those guys that I've experienced it with my players. I watch, to see what happens on social media. No matter what happens, every game Emoni comes out, you'll see 20, 30, 40 comments in a post. Overrated, trash, sometimes even derogatory and abusive and aggressive. And if you think about the mind state of a 15, 16-year-old kid, that's to deal with that on a daily basis, but still has to somehow find a way to come out and play at his highest level. And nobody knows what's going on in his personal life, right? Like these kids are dealing with COVID this year. You don't know, if he's stressed about schoolwork. You don't know, if there's something going on with the family. Nobody thinks, nobody cares. We're looking at him as a basketball player and not thinking about the humanistic side of it. And I think that that's what the couple times, and I've had the pleasure of watching Emoni grow over the years. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about his game because there's some pieces that guys aren't really talking about. But that was the biggest thing for me when I was watching him this year. It appeared as if he's getting to that point where he's kind of tired of being that target and not being able to respond. And he's done a great job. In my opinion, there was a game in Dayton that we were covering. And, right before the tip-off of the game, the team tried to change up the lineup to put 3 or 4 different people in that weren't on the roster, and then there was some jawing, and there were adults that were talking crazy to him. And it was just a tough evening. And then right on the heels of that, you got grown men coming up to him trying to get him to sign their ball. And there were so many things going on, and the kid took it all in stride. So seeing that and seeing that growth and the maturity, it makes you kind of, take another look at it and say, what are we putting these kids through as they're navigating this process of, like you said, he's not a pro yet. He's 16, 17 years old. He hasn't even stepped foot on college. And is it fair to put that much pressure, not only, from the analyst side, because that's going to happen, right? That's their job. That's part of, if you want to play in the NBA, at some point, you need to have tough skin and be able to be critiqued. Because if you look at it, man, they said Steph Curry couldn't hoop, right? Dame Lillard was torn apart. It's happened to the best of the best. They said Russell Westbrook was washed up. It's part of being an elite level player. You can expect that. But some of the outside hate that are coming from, other kids and, hey, people are going to be mad about it, but I'm going to talk about it. The state of Michigan. The state of Michigan has been waiting for Emoni to fail for the simple fact that they decided to go outside of the lines and say, look, you're not going to allow travel. You're not going to allow national televised games. Well, we're not going to continue along that archaic system. We're going to do our own thing. So you have people within the state of Michigan that are preying on his downfall and waiting for him to be unsuccessful. That's a lot to put on a 16, 17-year-old kid.
It really is. And it's been happening for a while. And I respect him and his dad for developing the platform where they bucked the system, where they said, I coach here in Michigan. I've coached, played, been here all my life. So I spent a lot of time around coaches, and they complain all the time about the restrictions of the MHSAA, and they bucked the system. They said, you know what? We're not going to complain. We're going to create our own platform, and we're going to have our own team, and we're going to play national teams, the stuff that you guys been talking about for years. So I've always respected that, the fact that they buck the system and say, you know what, we're going to do it on our own. But once you get to a high level of a caliber player like Emoni Bates, you're going to get it from all angles. You're going to get it from friends. You're going to get it from family. You're going to get it from schoolmates. You're going to get it from the guy in California you never turned on the TV, but he knows who Emoni Bates is. So as unfair as it is, it's like Coach said, it's a gift and a curse. Being able to handle that, we still have to remember he's still 16, 17 years old. He's still a kid. So to his credit, he haven't ended up on ESPN. He's still the #1 ranked player. Everybody's still, he's getting offers now. So, I mean, he's still doing something well, where we're noticing his talent and what he's doing. And to his credit, he hasn't done something so damaging that we're not talking about anymore, that we move on to the next kid. Because every year, Emoni Bates. So for all the bad that he might do, he's doing just as good, if not more, being able to handle that at a young age. So I do respect that, the fact that they created their own platform and it says, you know what, we know what it is, and you got to be able to handle it. You got to take the sweat off your back. And the bigger you get, it's going to get worse. And to his credit, he's handled it well.
Yeah, and there's lumps. There's lumps that come along with going that route, going the prep route. And I can speak to that. When I went to Spire and we brought some guys out the state of Michigan. I was public enemy #1, and guys were like, "Oh no, don't let he gonna take your kids away to Spire." But a couple things that I learned along the way, and I'm sure I had to learn through experience. So I'm sure Elgin and Corey Tucker and his staff learned it throughout this year. #1, you can't play everybody. No, when you have kids of the caliber of Emoni, Dylan, Big Sean Phillips, when you have guys like that, you can't play guys, for example, and no disrespect to Elevation Prep, but none of us knew who they were. And they played in that game. There was some words exchanged. Emoni took a hard foul that, if you watch it, some people say it was clean. I don't believe it was. It looked very dirty. Emoni got hurt in that game. Off of that and off of some back and forth online, Elevation Prep, they gained 800-900 followers on social media. So for them, it was a win, right? Like nobody knew who they were coming in. They're coming in trying to make a name off the kid. And, one of the things that I learned during our time at Spire, you can't go to, or you can't attend every single fight that you're invited to, because sometimes it's not worth the risk. That's #1. And #2, going about it in a COVID year, I can only imagine, I had difficulty scheduling in a regular year. I can only imagine the trouble that they have putting together that schedule. And you've got a kid and you've got a team full of kids that have traditionally only played within their state, right? Like they may have traveled for EYBL or AAU or whatever. But now they're traveling all around the country playing high school basketball, along with juggling their academics along. So it's a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle. So I don't think it was, for anybody saying negative about this year, I think that there were a lot of outside obstacles and hurdles that unless you've been in that position, you don't even understand that they were going through. And for that, it's a win for me. And I had the conversation. I told you, Cam, when we left, we covered the game together where they played against Spire. He was not slated to play. And that, to me, you had a lot of people that were, oh man, I came here to see Emoni. For me, I learned more about Emoni in that game than I had leading up to it. And what I mean by that, I've had several situations where, whether playing for us, playing against us, or guys I just observed on the circuit or whatnot, where star players don't play. And sometimes they feel, or they seem disengaged from what's going on. Emoni had an opportunity, and he had, the situation where he wasn't playing. It was announced he wasn't playing. He sat in that first chair. He talked to his teammates through the entire game. Each time a timeout was called, he was the first one out in the huddle, coaching guys up. He saw that they needed a little help. He went and got dressed and came out at halftime. So, I saw a completely different level of leadership from, at the time, a newly 17-year-old kid, a junior in high school, that far exceeded my expectations. Because in other situations like that, I've seen guys be like, "Oh man, I'm cool. I'm chilling today. I'm not going to do anything. I'm relaxing." No, he was engaged every step along the way.
I think he's a kid that, I think he kind of feeds off the energy of competition. I think he's excited to compete. So I think, we touched on the scheduling, well, I think it was difficult for them to get teams to play. So they had to play kind of whoever they could play because they wanted to play a certain number of games. They wanted to make sure they showcased him as well as his teammates. But then I understand where you're coming from. Your point, you can't play everybody because sometimes they have more to benefit than you do. But I think Emoni just looks at it like he just wants to play, man. Like it doesn't matter who it is. If they want to line up and play us, if they're going to have cheap shots, if they're not as good, but they're going to try to foul me, or if they're really good and they think that we're outnumbered, he kind of wants that challenge. I've never seen a kid that's this highly ranked, this highly touted, this highly followed that plays with a chip on the shoulder like Emoni. The thing that impresses me the most is I feel like he's always in the gym and he thinks everybody's against him. Every single possession. You can just see it in warm-ups. Like he's looking around in the crowd like, oh, y'all don't think I'm that good, huh? Y'all heard about me, but y'all think that these guys are going to get me tonight. Well, I got something for you. And from the first play of the game, when the jump ball goes up, his first make, you can just see his energy, his enthusiasm, his grit. For a skinny kind of frail kid, he plays like a stereotypical inner city kid, like with that toughness, with that, I'm about my business and I'll match up with anybody. I'll go against anybody kind of feel. And I think that's what makes him who he is. We haven't touched on this much, like his overall skill package. With his size and length, he gets the KD comparison a lot. And I think that's unfair. Just because KD is so talented, I don't think we should ever compare anybody to KD. But he's probably the closest thing that you can see. I mean, who else can you see with this size and length that can make shot fake, step through, threes, under pressure? I think he's great in the high ball screen. I think he prefers to be kind of out on the perimeter making plays than he does with his back to the basket. He's a legitimate perimeter player with length. That's why he gets the KD comparison. As big fair guard. Or unfair as it is, he's a big guard. There's no other way to describe him. He's a big guard. And he's not a big dude trying to play guard, which we have tons of those all across the country. He's a legitimate big guard.
Legit guard.
Make plays, can pass it, finish in transition, the Euro steps, the left-handed finishes, the right-handed finishes, the floaters. He's just an elite talent. And people are going to nitpick him and dislike him for whatever reason, instead of just enjoying him and allowing him to grow and make mistakes, which all teenagers do.
Yeah, he's an underrated facilitator. I think that you touched on something that we don't hear often is his ability to pass, his vision, his ability to make plays for others. I always ask myself, and it's no disrespect to his teammates there at Ypsi Prep, but when I look at his game, I automatically start envisioning what it's going to look like at the next level, right? And the reason why I say that, I was blessed to see a team that included LaMelo, Rocket, Isaiah, and Myron Gardner. And when you saw those guys play together, you saw flashes of what it could look like when you have 4 pros on the floor at the same time, or 4 potential pros on the floor at the same time. And I think Emoni, in a lot of cases, he's drawing 4, 6, 8 eyes, where at the next level, that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to be able to triple team him or pack line defense him. So what happens when you're in those situations?
Excuse me. The thing about Emoni is when you look at his game as where it might fit at the next level, you can see it because he's so uber talented. He's highly skilled. He can shoot with a wide range. He can come across half court and he can pull it. So when you look at his game, you can envision him, being a pro because he's got pro skill, being able to make plays for others and pulling up off the dribble in the ball screen. He makes pro level plays. So it's easy to see his game in that sense. Now, is it fair to say, well, is he going to be the best player ever? Like, that ain't fair. But as a 16, 17-year-old, to be able to have the skill to shoot the ball to 30 feet and effortlessly, like, that's not an easy thing to do. So that means, when I see things as a coach, when I see him making those kind of shots, that means he spent some time in the lab. Like Coach D Lab, let me use your name. He spent some time in the lab working on his craft because that doesn't happen often. There aren't many players at his age that can make these plays. That's why everybody's so scrutinizing him and nitpicking, because he's 101. Ain't another 16 or 17-year-old that can make the kind of plays that he makes against the type of level of talent that he plays against all the time. Every time he laces them up, somebody is coming at him. So that's the one thing that when I had a chance to cover the game with you, JB, is that he did more than score. He was able to rebound. He defended well. He made plays for others. And those are the type of plays that when you talk about the next level, that he's going to have to do more is, okay, everybody knows you can score. You go out and score 50. Okay. What else can you do to impact the game? Because you might be playing with somebody else that can score 52. And you might be sitting next to another guy that can score 52. Well, it ain't but one ball. All three guys can't score 50. So how can you make your impact on the game without scoring? And when I saw that, I was like, okay, he's ready to take that next step. Now, is it quite there yet? I'm not going to say it's totally there yet. Still needs to work on those things. But you can see it. You can see it as he's maturing and growing.
Excited to bring Rashad Phillips into the conversation, man. When I heard that he was going to be on here, I got excited because when it comes to the game of basketball, when it comes to evaluations, to me, there's nobody that has the level of experience, has the eye that he has, and is not afraid to say what he sees. You know, I've been a fan of Rashad since his playing days at UD Mercy. Him and I have had a lot of conversations back when Jermaine was over at UD, and him and I would sit down and we would chat and we would talk about some of the guys over there. So, man, excited to have you here. Blessed to have the opportunity to share the stage with you. You've done so much. You're one of those guys that I can always look to your evaluations and know if I say, hey, I'm not too sure about something, I can take a look and say, okay, Rashad sees the same thing I see, so I'm in good company.
That's the Yoda.
I really appreciate it. LaBarrie, what's up, baby?
What's going on with you, man? How you doing?
That's my man right there. Darryl, my guy. We get going during the draft time, man. I have such a good time with him. So I had to give my boy his flowers on here. Cam, I've been knowing Cam for 30 plus years. We're like family. He is a terrific basketball mind, and I love his approach to the game. And it's an honor to be on this stage with you guys because there's not a lot of times you can get real basketball guys in one room, and so that's really what I appreciate about you all. Justin, we go way back talking about the UND days and all that, man.
All eyes on three.
Yeah.
I had the t-shirt.
Yeah, it was one of those days, man. It was one of those careers, man. So again, I'm happy to be a part to kind of share my knowledge on the topic at hand.
That's what's up.
So while we got you, because I know your time is valuable, and you probably have about 37 draft mock-ups and write-ups you got to do.
You have no idea what my desk looks like right now.
I can imagine. So you're somebody that has, and before we even touch on Emoni, you're somebody that has a lot of experience evaluating young talent and seeing guys. For example, I watched you get killed on Trae Young on Twitter for I don't know how long, and now people are finally starting to come around and say, okay, you knew what you were talking about. So as somebody who has had experience dealing with guys that are put on a pedestal at a very young age, and been able to say, okay, hey, let's let time and merit be the judge here versus what we see right now. Give me kind of some insight on what you see from Emoni, and what you've seen over the years as you've watched him progress.
Yeah, when I watch this kid, I'm looking at a 6'8", offensive scorer. And when you look at the game, the way the NBA game is played and how it's celebrated, these are the type of prototypical wings that NBA teams lust over. He has a lot of ability. He has terrific range on his jump shot. I love the confidence in this kid. He's very tough-minded and he's daring. So those are the attributes that I like that he has that are attractive to NBA teams. But we also have to take into account that he's in high school. So we can't get ahead of ourselves. So when I evaluate a kid like Emoni Bates, I'm still looking at him as a kid, like a guy on the end of the NBA bench will destroy Emoni right now. And that's just the reality of it. He's not a grown man yet. He has NBA qualities and an NBA skill set, but he's still not there yet. And that's okay.
It's okay.
I think it's okay for him to not be there right now. He's a high school kid, so let's keep him where he is right now. I think we are, us on this call are, but I don't think the rest of the world is. They're grading him as if he's going to the finals to compete against the Lakers, and that's unfair.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So you touched on, you know, the NBA question. I've heard that kind of thrown around these last couple days. He decommitted from Michigan State on Friday, and ever since then, speculation has been swirling. Does he go to the NBA? Does he still go to college? Is he going to reclass up? When you hear all those and you think about all those, I mean, for me, and I'm not comparing him to LeBron at all, but you remember LeBron coming out of high school, he had an NBA-ready body. And I think that that's the difference when you look at guys and you look at that transition. Jonathan Kuminga had an NBA body, right? Yeah. So, you know, when you look at that, I mean, does he have the skill set to make that move to the G League? I think he does. But I think another year of growth and development, another year of him in the weight room and putting on some more size, a year of college to just learn and grow and mature a little bit more as a person, not just as a basketball player, but just have a little bit more life experience, have a little bit more. That's what I'm seeing. I could be wrong, but what I'm seeing is, once again, I'm a firm believer in allowing time to give you a little bit of grace. And I think that with 2 more years, he's ready for the NBA.
Oh, so here's my thing, and maybe, you know, maybe Darryl can weigh in on this. Here's how I feel. In this situation with Emoni, I think that he's been in the spotlight too long.
Yep.
And we've been able to pick him apart. And that's put him in almost a no-win situation if he goes to college. Like, we've put, not us, but the sports society has put Emoni in a bad situation. Because if he goes to college and averages 11 points a game, they're going to pick him apart. My advice to Emoni would be to go dark. I think sometimes you have to get out of the light to regain your light. He's been in it too long. So that's kind of how I would, if I was in his circle, I would try to figure out, how do we get out of the light and go dark and just get back in the lab, like Coach Cam was saying. Let's just get in the lab. Let's get away from the cameras. Let's get away from Instagram. Let's get away from Twitter. And we got 2 years to really make this thing work. Because going to college is something that you're putting all your chips in on that, as far as injuries, being broken down by evaluators like myself, over analyzing his game, and he could lose millions of dollars because the sports media world has put this kid on a pedestal as far as comparing him to LeBron. Look, there's only been, in my opinion, there's only been about 4 to 5 generational talents coming out of high school. And Emoni's not in that group. Kevin Garnett, okay, Lou Alcindor, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant. Like, he's not in that class. So that's just kind of how I feel, Darryl. I don't know, but that's just kind of my opinion on that.
I agree with you. I agree with both of y'all. So if I wasn't in the circle and you're being an adult and you have a good basketball mind, what Justin is saying makes sense. Needs more time, needs more seasoning. I thought the key thing he said was just life experiences, just to grow and mature as a person. Mm-hmm. But being in the circle, Rashad, you're 100% correct.
Okay.
You can't wait. If you go to college, things don't go well. And that's a relative term, because you might actually be on a good trajectory, but if you don't live up to what other people think you should be doing, or you mess around and have a knick-knack injury, have to sit out a month, basically what it comes down to is it can only hurt your stock. It can't raise your stock. And when you're in Emoni's classification, you should only be making moves that can raise your stock.
Exactly. Exactly.
It doesn't make sense. Anything that can hurt your stock just doesn't make sense.
Don't even do it.
Value you. It's no reason. It doesn't make any sense. So he's going to try to be on some trajectory to get to the league sooner rather than later. But then also, it's just the culture that we're in. We've talked about it in a couple of different things, but it's a microwave generation. Everybody wants everything now. Everybody wants everything quickly. So guys who are that level want to try to get there as soon as possible. They want to start making their first contract money as soon as possible so they can get into a second contract and be a year or 2 years younger, just to give you the longevity on the back end where now you've made, 20, 30 extra million because you started the process earlier. So unfortunately, if I'm him, I agree with Rashad. We got to start this process sooner than later.
Yep.
But I also agree with Coach Cam. We got to be in the gym focused on what got us here, continue to improve our fundamentals, continue to mature, watching film, getting better at every aspect of the game so that when the opportunity presents itself, that we're prepared and we're ready because we know the critics are coming with their knives to stab us in the back as soon as they possibly can.
And not only the critics are coming, but there's those other grown men that are making a living off the game of basketball and are feeding their family off the game of basketball. They're coming too. And that's where I look at, I agree 100% with you guys that, there are so many intangibles and so many things that could happen that we can't prepare for. We can't gauge, an injury or he doesn't play well. But if you look at, for example, Jalen Suggs, from a marketing standpoint, Jalen Suggs put himself in a much better position with that year at Gonzaga than he would have had if he went straight to the G League. And I'm not saying anything negative about the way that the G League has ran their program. But for me, when Isaiah Todd made that decision, his name kind of disappeared, right? Like you haven't seen a lot of marketing, a lot of his name, his brand has not grown. Whereas as a rookie, if you put him and Jalen Suggs together coming into the NBA, Jalen is a much more marketable talent moving forward. Jalen's a much more marketable talent moving forward because of what he did in college with millions of eyes watching him versus what Isaiah did. And Isaiah could turn out to be a better pro. You know what I mean? But when you're looking at, getting to that dollar, getting to that biggest contract, getting those shoe deals, getting those different endorsements, you have to put yourself in a position, you have to understand, and this would be my advice to Emoni and to his camp, is that this game is all about marketing. And a lot of people, they get frustrated when I say it, or they don't like to hear me say, this is a business. And it comes down to how marketable are you? How many tickets are you going to sell? How many jerseys are you going to sell? And can I put you on my commercials, on my billboards, on the cover of our booklets? These are things that are difference makers, and it's going to make Jalen Suggs a whole lot more money based off of his time at Gonzaga than he would have had going straight pro. So that's kind of where I'm looking at what Emoni can do. Emoni can change the whole narrative behind who he is by going to college, playing a little bit of a role, not saying becoming a role player.
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough to do.
He playing a role.
No, I'm not saying by any stretch of imagination him being a role player, but I'm saying him going into a system where it's not just all about Emoni and it's not only geared and focused on him, where guys can't double and triple team him all game long.
That boy,
I'll be honest with you. I'm on both sides of the fence as far as whether Emoni should not or should go to college. If he does happen to go to college, which they have not changed the rules, so he's either going to have to go pro or go to college. So there's no in between. He can't go to the NBA. So he's going to have to make a decision.
He's going to have to do something.
He's going to have to do something. So somebody's going to be right on this end and somebody's going to be wrong. But if he does go to college, if he does decide to go to college, I never thought MSU was a good fit for him. Now, if he does decide to go to college, I think he has to go somewhere where he has a more pro style type of game so you can see how his game can translate at the highest level. If he goes somewhere where it's a system, like say he can't play in the Big Ten. You just can't go. Just look at the Big Ten at all. They've only had one first team all NBA guy in the last 20 years. That was Chris Webber. So you go to the Big Ten, you're going to hurt your stock immediately. Now, who's to say Kevin Durant, he goes to Texas, he averages 25 a game. So you can see, okay, he's a skinny kid, but he had to play against the big boys in the Big 12. So he had to show, because just think about this. Emoni Bates in 2 years is going to have to guard Paul George. He got to guard Devin Booker. He got to guard Kawhi Leonard. So like he's got to be able to handle that type of weight. So I mean, I know it's tough, Rashad. I know you don't like him going to college for sure. It can definitely backfire, but just think about it. Carmelo did it. Kyrie did it. Zion did it. Why not? I say give it a shot, but he got to go to the right fit. He can't go to the Big Ten. Now you go to the SEC, ACC, maybe he can't go to the Big Ten.
Yeah, I just think that the name value in itself just puts too much pressure on the kid to perform. You're betting.
What if you can get paid off your likeness though? An Emoni Bates college jersey will make a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna pass that bill quick enough for that. I just don't. I just don't think.
Could you imagine though an Emoni Bates college jersey?
Yeah, I don't.
Well,
yeah,
right off the shelf.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would care about that. Honestly,
Yeah,
I don't think there's so much money for him to make outside of college. I don't think he's one of those kids that'll get caught up in his jersey sales. I just think that, man, we know how the college game is, man.
Yeah.
It's college basketball is difficult.
It really is.
College basketball is difficult.
It really is.
It's no 3 seconds. It's midline. It's pack line. It's a lot of systematic ways to stop great offensive players. And it's a lot of physicality to college basketball. So, we talking about Carmelo. Carmelo was, had more girth to him. And I think Carmelo Anthony was a better player coming out of high school than Emoni Bates. I think Kevin Durant was a better player than Emoni coming out of. So this is not taking anything from Emoni. I just think that we need to bring down the hype. This kid is going to be an NBA player. There's no doubt about that. But as far as he's going to be the next Durant and all that, I think that we're doing the kid a disservice. Just let's allow him to write his story. We're trying to write his narrative for him instead of allowing him to write it for us. And I say this all the time with media. The best form of media is speaking on what's in plain sight and stop trying to create what's not there. We're trying to create this huge storyline on Emoni Bates, and I'm like, let's just allow him to write his story and then we just echo what he's writing. That'll make it easier for all of us.
So you touched on something that I think is an interesting point, and it's his story and writing his story and telling his story. And I think that because Emoni, the way he's moved within the media, within social media, he's not very active. He doesn't do a whole lot as far as from a personal branding standpoint. So if you look at Emoni in comparison to, let's say, and not comparing their games at all, I'm just talking clearly from a branding standpoint. Chet Holmgren, 270.5 thousand followers on Instagram, Emoni 16,000, right? It's just a different way in which he utilizes his brand, where Chet has systematically, and I don't know if that's because he's had, people in his ear that understand sports marketing and branding and have been working with him on that. But those are things, when you look at making that jump to the professional side, those are things that equal money and equal dollar signs. And I think that somebody being able to tell his story, like you said, I mean, right now we're hearing everybody else's narrative or interpretation of Emoni Bates.
Exactly.
And there's nobody within the camp
that's telling it.
That is telling it, but not only telling it, but systematically telling it from a narrative and from a viewpoint. I've always talked about every kid I've worked with, every kid I've had within a program of mine. I talk about highlighting and accenting their positives, shielding, eliminating, and then developing the weaknesses, right?
Yep.
Utilizing, as social media has come around, there's a lot of kids that just aren't social media kids. Myron Gardner hated social media. I get it. That's you. Like, each kid has their own way and feel of how they want it, whether they want to interact or not. But when you're talking about being the number one player in the country, and you're talking about, a pro, when you're talking about NBA, and you're talking about those different things, branding is vitally important for the long haul and for the long run. And I think that if you're going the direction that you're saying, Shot, which makes a whole lot of sense, going dark, you can't just go dark and not have a media presence, not
absolutely.
have a branding agency or somebody working with you. to control that narrative and to build you up, because that's what worked very, very well for LaMelo, right? Like people from the outside looking in, they want to say all the negative things about Alan Foster and all the negative things that happened throughout that standpoint. But what I will say is LaMelo was extremely media trained. He understood how to utilize social media. He understood how to talk and project his, like, he told his story. Whether you liked it at the time,
he told his story regardless of what we said. He told his own story.
Yep, sure did.
He told us a story, and we had to go with it.
Yep.
I think everybody's different though. Like, to me, I'm not sure Emoni is comfortable. Like, LaMelo seemed like it was just very natural for him. It was easy for him.
Yeah.
The limelight, it didn't bother him. To me, Emoni just wants to be the guy who comes in as a killer on the court and never say a word to you in a post-game interview.
Yeah.
Like, everybody kind of has to grow and do their, tell their, we're talking about tell your story. Well, his story is he's not comfortable talking to the media right now. He tells his story through his play.
Yeah.
So he will eventually grow and get comfortable and become more media savvy. But until then, I think they've done a good job kind of letting him do what he does best, which is play. And I think the mystique of Emoni has added to his lore and allowed him to kind of raise in the rankings, because we don't know as much about him as we kind of want to. So I think it's worked in his favor, to be honest, the way they've kind of handled it. Some people might want to do it a different way, but I think their way has worked for them. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to, can you produce when you get on the court? And so far he's been able to do that. But I do agree with what Rashad said. Let's just let him be a high school kid, be a really good high school player.
Yes.
And then let's just kind of let him matriculate at his own path and not foreshadow what we think he's going to become. Allow him to become what he becomes.
Whatever he comes, that's the best way to go about it, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lab, I completely agree with everything you said. And I think that's where, in my experience in dealing with kids, for example, LaMelo didn't always love doing the interviews, right? Like, he didn't always love that, but that experience and, it made him that much better at them. So it's one of those situations, if a kid's not going to go to college, right? Because I remember the first day I stepped on campus at University of Illinois, we had our first workout, and then the next thing we had to go to media training, right? If he's not going to receive that at the college level through college athletics, it's something that needs to start being worked on immediately if he's going to make that move directly to the pro route. Because nowadays, if this was 10 years ago, I don't think it would matter, right? Like, you can be that guy that doesn't want to talk in the post-game press conferences. You can be that guy that doesn't really want to have that media presence. But nowadays, when you talk about, $100 million, $200 million, $300 million men, people aren't cutting those checks for guys that aren't going to be able to. And I'm not talking about on the basketball side, right? Like, basketball, they're cutting the checks for whoever's going to win them the ball games.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about Nike and we're talking about, Adidas, or we're talking about Chase, or we're talking about whoever, they're not coming to the table with the type of money that he deserves for being the type of player, or being potentially the type of player he can be. He's not going to get that if he doesn't want to do the media piece, or he doesn't evolve into, and I get it, he's 17 years old, right? So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves even talking about it. But I'm just saying, from a standpoint, if he skips that step of college where he can get that experience and learn that, that's a piece that he needs to start having that conversation and working on now to prepare him for that pro level.
I agree. I believe that they're going to surround him with the right marketing team and all of those things that it takes to become a true professional. I really support the Emoni Bates family, the movement, and what he's been able to accomplish. I will continue to, speak highly on his behalf. I compared him to the great Benji Wilson as far as high school career. He's on that trajectory. I think that's where I'm going to leave my comparison until he finishes writing the rest of his story. So my hat's off to Emoni Bates and his family. Keep rolling, young fella. We'll support you.
I agree.
Coach Cam, some closing thoughts from you, kind of on. I mean, you've had an opportunity to see him on many different levels for many different years. You know, what would be your piece of advice that you give if Emoni's watching this or somebody sends it over to him? What will be your parting words, your closing words to Emoni?
Having watching this game over the years, he's definitely going to have to add to his body, and I think some of that comes with age because he's only 16 or 17. But to be able to play at the high level that we keep talking about, playing in the NBA, he's going to have to add some muscle to his frame. So having a good strength coach, whether he goes to college or not, to be able to build his body up to where he's ready to have that 82-game grind, which is different. People don't understand that 82-game grind is different. So your body has to be able to absorb that. So hopefully he's able. I'm not saying add 30 pounds, but I'm saying make sure that your body is able to play against grown men every single night. In the position he has to play against the best of the best. He's not playing against scrubs. So your body has to be able to, take that burden. So hopefully he can build on his body, continue that. And his playmaking skills, I really like the way that he passes the ball because he has to learn how to play with other great players. Right now it's one or two, good players on the team. But when you play on a professional level, everybody's good.
Everybody.
So everybody's good. I mean, guys on the bench, the guy to get the water, the guy that's on reserves, the wave, they all can play. So you have to find a niche. Like, what's your niche? What's going to separate you from the other guy that's 6'9", that can shoot the lights out that we're going to talk about in 2 other years? What is going to separate you from those guys? And I think his playmaking skills can do that. I think he could be defensively. I think he can really make a lot of plays defensively. I don't even think he really tries because, I don't know. But I think defensively, he can make more plays defensively, even though he does. And once he starts making the impact other than scoring, because we know he can score 50. Once he starts doing those things, then you say, okay, now I can see his niche. He's just an all-around great player. So those are the type of things that I like to see his game progress at. And just take it in. Be a kid sometimes. Just play the game, enjoy the game, be a kid. You ain't no pressure on you. You're 17. You haven't even graduated high school yet. No pressure on you. Look, the NBA will be there. Trust me, it's a young league. The longer it takes you to get there might actually be a good idea because the league is young. So you don't want to rush to get there. It's going to be there. Take your time, mature your game, and the lights will be there to come on when it's time to turn them on.
D-Lab.
I just say, man, just enjoy yourself, man. You'll never get these years back. I know you're like I said, it's a blessing and a curse to be under this type of microscope and have so many eyes on you and so many people so worried and concerned with every single thing you do. But know that it's a blessing to have that as well. Like, take the positive out of it. You're doing something that I'm assuming you love to do, and you bring joy to people when you play well. So just trust the work, continue to grind, get in the gym, put your head down, work. But at the same time, enjoy this whole process. Enjoy being around your teammates. Enjoy being with your father. This opportunity to spend, an enormous amount of time with your father, because that is even going to go away sooner than you think it is. And just, know that you have an opportunity to do some special things. But if you don't concentrate on the here and now, the day in, the day out process, the tedious things, the grind, then you won't get to where you ultimately want to get to. And then also just make good decisions. Be conscientious of who you're around, the people you surround yourself with, the things you do, because unfortunately you have a large microscope on you, and people, for whatever reason, this is the way our society is built. People want to see you do poorly. There's people on this call want to see you do great things, though. So just, be smart and wise in what you do, and enjoy yourself and be a kid and have fun.
Absolutely. And you guys touched on all the things from a basketball standpoint. There's nothing left for me to add, but what I will add, as I stated earlier, my best piece of advice for Emoni and for his team and for everybody surrounding him is, number one, you don't have to attend every fight that you're invited to. A lot of people, and I believe a lot of these people that live on social media, their whole life, their whole objective is built upon getting a response out of you. And, you may think, hey, I shut him up because he didn't know what he was talking about. So I clap back. No, that's all that does is put fuel to the fire for the next troll to come along and try to get a response with his words. So, I would say you don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. You know, there's a reason why they're not able to step on the court against you and talk that same talk. They can't compare. There's no reason to go back and forth with anybody. So, you know, I think Emoni has an opportunity to really, like you said before, tell his own story, you know, create his own narrative. And, you know, whether that story ends up in being an NBA Hall of Famer, or that story ends up in being, you know, a very good NBA player that took care of his family and his community and, you know, did right by, you know, that's whatever that looks like for you. Nobody can define success but you. And you have to right now take a moment to step aside and say, hey, what do I want this to look like? Because I tell everybody I work with, begin with the end in mind. What is it that you want to accomplish? And when you begin with the end in mind, now we can reverse engineer that success. So for Emoni, it's, you know, telling your story. Hey, for a lot of guys, and I know we're running long here, but something Russell Westbrook said the other day, it really stood out to me. You know, there was somebody that was heckling him and talking about him not winning the NBA championship. And he said, hey, man, I was a champion when I made it out of the neighborhood I came from. I was a champion when I made it to the NBA, right? Because not everybody has an opportunity. Not only not everybody, but very, very few people have an opportunity to make those steps. So stop allowing people to define for you, and I'm not saying he allows people, but what I'm saying is don't pay attention to anybody else's analysis or evaluation of you. If they're not signing the check that's going to have your name on it, at the end of the day, it really isn't that important. Continue to focus on, like you said, being able to spend time with his family, being able to spend time with his friends, being able to develop and get better each day. And like you said, as a high school player, you know, all of us on this call wish in some way, shape, form, or fashion we could go back and go back to high school with the things we know now and do it a little bit differently.
I still be playing.
Yeah, I could do it. I could do a few things differently.
Yeah, for sure. I would be a coach, I tell you that.
Guys, I appreciate everybody hopping on here. One of the things I appreciate the most is just the positivity and the love that was shared throughout the call. I think that, you know, there's way too much negativity attached to these young players. You know, Shad, before you hopped on, we talked about, you know, kind of, you know, you're seeing the Kyrie Walker effect kind of here with Emoni. It build him up to slowly, you know, systematically tear him down. And I think that having guys like yourselves all hop on here and have positive things to say, we all understand that there's room for growth. And that's natural with any 17-year-old player. If you show me a 17-year-old player that has no room for growth, you're showing me somebody that's already peaked and they're not going to be able to play much further. Yeah. So, you know, if you give me an hour to evaluate film, I can pick apart any 17-year-old you show me. That's just
what you won't need an hour. You won't need an hour. I'll tell you that. I coach them. You won't need an hour.
It'll take 5 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I appreciate the positivity, guys.
For sure.
Any closing remarks? I mean, obviously we've talked about Emoni. We've talked about, you know, everything moving forward. One thing I do want to touch on before we leave, you know, we're going to be broadcasting SUVtv. We're going to be broadcasting the Iverson Classic this week. I'm extremely excited. It's the only All-American game or All-Star game being played this year due to COVID. McDonald's All-American game didn't happen. You've got some big names. You've got a great lineup. We're going to have an opportunity to tune in and check out some practices. We're going to have an opportunity to evaluate some guys kind of behind the scenes. There's going to be dunk contests, three-point contests. So I'm extremely excited to see a lot of those guys. The NBA did clear it for, you know, NBA evaluators to come out and watch that game. So, you know, that lets you know the caliber of talent that's going to be there. The guys did a great job pulling in an amazing roster. So I'm really, really excited about that.
No, that's dope. The AI Classic. Let's get it, man. Yeah. I mean, if anybody's going to do it, let's do it with AI, man. Let's do it one of ours, man. I like that. I like that. Yeah. Let's get it. I'm excited for it. I mean, I looked at the rosters. It's going to be players galore. So, yeah. I mean, if you haven't gone and looked at those rosters, who's playing in this game, you need to go ahead and do so. This is going to be one to see.
Absolutely. All right, guys, I appreciate you. Appreciate you. I'm looking forward to us all hopping on soon. We got to figure out who we're talking about next.
Oh, we'll find somebody.
Sounds good. Let me know.
Sounds good, fellas. I ain't hard to find. Just put the Batman signal in the air.
Right. That's what's up. Hey, respect, fellas.
I'm making a Yoda symbol.
Yeah, just put it in the sky. I'll see it, and then I appear. That's what I do for draft for Darryl every time. I just put the signal up there, and he show up to the draft with his suit on. That's it. I don't have to text him. I just flash it up there, and he appears.
Hey, while you guys are here, I really appreciated your draft coverage. I was watching y'all draft coverage more than anything else. Like, I really appreciate that.
Man.
Yeah,
it was more than he's a good pick. He's a good player. Like, actually went into what they do and how they fit in a system. It wasn't, oh yeah, he's a great pick from a great. Of course, I mean, NBA draft pick. But I know I really did appreciate you guys' coverage. So I had to say it.
No, we appreciate it. Respect, fellas.
All right, y'all.
Talk soon.